Okay, it's 2 o'clock. Welcome to some ink smooshing and doodling. So what I have here is, these are the two examples that kind of sparked an interest in doing this technique today when I was doing the live video last week. And I have to give credit where credit is due. This is not my brainchild. A lot of people do ink smooshing. The first time I saw it was Christina Werner was doing it. This is from Christina Werner's class. This rainbow one was totally accidental. I had a lot of spilled paint and I didn't know what to do with it. Instead of grabbing my rag, I grabbed a cardstock piece and that's what happened. And these were kind of just sitting there and I didn't know what to do with them until 2 days after my daughter's birthday. She had asked for a live Zoom meeting with Kathy Rakusin, and Kathy Rack is the person who runs the Daily Marker blog. If you haven't seen it, I urge you to go check it out. She's also on Instagram at Kathy Rack, and she does this Daily Marker 30-day challenge where she asks you to participate and color every day for 10 minutes. So we did a live Zoom with her and she taught Mira how to do this. And I just fell in love with it. And it's, you can vary it. You can do it in so many different ways. But then I also had my own take on it. So I wanted to show you examples of, thank you, Claudia, for saying that the accidental one is your favorite. I also wanted to show examples of, so this is what she taught. This is her technique. But then inspired from her technique, I went ahead and did some other things. So I made this. And this is a final card. So I did want to show what you can do to turn these into cards. So that's an example of what I did with it, where I just started out kind of with a rectangular line, and then I just started making these circles. So this was freehand. And you don't have to, whatever we do today, you don't have to just do that. So this is the reason why I'm showing you other examples of what can be done after you've done the ink smooshing. You can do something like this. If this feels too complicated, you can do something simple like this. And this really, there was nothing to it. It took me maybe 10 minutes outside. Just kind of, I actually had it upside down when I was doing this. So I did like U's with my black marker and then kind of just followed. So it's mermaid scales, but I turned it around, slapped on a sentiment, added some sequins, and it became a card. So you can do that, or if you are not a big fan of circles and shapes and stuff like that, and you want to do something else, you can do rectangles. And there's really no limit to what you can do with your doodling. It's just freehand doodling. It's something, again, there are no mistakes. There's no proper way of doing it. You could, of course, use a stencil and, be done. But if you just want to do something with just being idle and being creative, I highly recommend this. So let's get to it. We're going to start off with some watercolors, and I'll show you what we're going to be using. So these are actual proper watercolors. This is our traveler's set. You can have watercolor pan set that you could use. You could have any other kind of, if you have tubes, you could use those. If you have bottles of poster paint, you could use that. Just about any kind of watercolor will do. And you can take a regular brush, dip it in water, get the paint out and put it on your mat. This is a slick surface. If you don't have this kind of a slick surface, then I recommend having plastic, acetate or plastic over here, so that you just need something you could get dirty, doesn't get wrinkly, and you can lift paint off of. And you can either use watercolor paper or you can use thick cardstock. I'm using thick cardstock today, and I have linked to the one that I use in the video description, so you can have a look at that. So just any colors will do. I don't really think too much or too hard or too long about what I'm using. Just kind of whatever's accessible, easy, and like if some tray doesn't open, that color doesn't get used today. So that's kind of my way of doing art. You might have a more particular way of choosing colors and doing it the right way, but I like to play. So all I'm doing is just taking some paint and randomly just doing some zigzags. This is a water-filled brush, so I don't have to keep dipping my brush into the water. And I do want to emphasize that as you're doing this, or if you're not doing it, but you're watching me do this, if you have questions, just please do type them in, because I am being able to read your comments and your questions, and I can answer as I'm doing this. So just taking some yellow and doing that. Mira is also following along, so I'm just going to do this and then I'll give you the paint palette, okay, so that you can do yours. And I'm just going to wipe off the yellow, and I'll do some blue here where it meets. It's going to be green, as you can see. I like to just kind of do it randomly. If you want to make a pattern, that's fine. Going for some purple here. I don't know, maybe that'll look weird, but we'll see. Okay, so just those two colors and a bit of purple. Mira, you can start yours on this. And then I'm going to take my Mr. bottle, that's a spray bottle, fancy word for a spray bottle, and just spray. This is going to get really wet. Your paper is going to buckle, no matter what paper you use. Whether it buckles more or less depends on the thickness of your paper. It will buckle, so don't get alarmed. And then I'm just taking, this is my pre-cut cardstock. This is 4.25 by 5.5 inches. And I'm just going to lay it on top, like that. And then I'm just going to kind of slide it to capture all the watercolor that was there. Let it rest for just 1 second. Do you see how pretty that is? Just these beautiful aquamarine kind of shades. Oh, this reminds me of Jamaica, the green sea water there. I miss traveling. Okay, so we've got our first. You see how I'm just doing that wherever the paint didn't kind of take? Again, it's very organic. There's no process to it. It's just covering all the white areas. I love this patch of yellow here. That is so cool. So that's what you can do. You can experiment with different colors. You can do rainbows. You can plan a bit more. And if you want to do like circles of paint under over there and then smush it, you can do that. You can do rectangles. You can do whatever shape your heart desires. Or you can just be random about it and see what that yields. So Mira, you didn't spray it with water, did you? You got to spray it and then. So I want to show you what happened with Mira. So she did put the paint down on her mat and she smushed it, but she forgot to spray the paint that she had put on the mat with water first. So if you do that, I kind of like this too, because this is a really cool abstract effect that could,
it kind of looks like splatter paint.
Yeah, it could become a cool graffiti thing. But you can also, what you can do is if you happen to have something like this and there's still remnants of some paint on your mat, just spray some water on the mat and put this back on it and you'll get a nice effect. So that's my one panel's done. This was with watercolor pan sets. Now we'll do another panel, and this one I want to use watercolor brushes. I just want to show you the different ways. If you don't have one particular tool or supply, use something else, get creative. Okay, so for this one, same thing. So these are the colors that Mira chose. Again, just squiggles. I don't know if she wanted me to put them side by side in this order or not, but that's the order she gave them to me.
I just picked random colors.
You just picked random colors, okay. So you and I kind of picked the same colors because I went for blue and green, blue and yellow, and that became green. And you got blue, green, purple, and yellow.
Funny.
So just squiggles. These are watercolor brushes. We've got these a long time ago. It doesn't matter, the brand really doesn't matter. But I did put some recommendations of things that you could use. You have to hold it at an angle that the tube is still touching the water when you're spraying it. If you tilt the entire bottle, then nothing's going to spray because the pipe is not long enough. Okay, so in this one, I'm just going to drag this over. So this again is a different kind of smushing where I just dragged it. Now you see how this, I'm going to have you compare. So I feel like the watercolor pans, when we use those, the effect is definitely much more subdued and amorphous. When we use this, the transitions aren't as blended into each other.
Oh my gosh, this is super red.
And we didn't get a lot of coverage here. So I am just going to see the parts that didn't get coverage, and I'm going to try to see if I can get them some coverage. So just putting some green down over here on this side, and I'll put some purple and yellow for this side. And you know, you can always go back in with color pencils or even your paint brushes and just give them full coverage. So I'm just going to spray again. And just look at my paper here, do the green where there was no color, lift it up and make sure I got the edge covered over there. And honestly, if you are going to be trimming this to make it into a card, the edges don't really matter because you're going to be trimming them off anyway. So don't fret about it. I don't want this to become stressful for anyone. Just have fun, get what you will. You're going to be covering this up with doodles anyway. So don't worry about not getting enough coverage or things like that. Because you see when, I'll show you this example, when I did this one, I just used two colors, yellow and pink. And I didn't have enough coverage on the sides, but it didn't matter because ultimately I ended up trimming the edges and put it on the card base. So if you're ending up making cards out of this technique, worrying is the last thing you want to be doing. So Mira fixed hers, I shouldn't say fixed, but she sprayed some water and this is what she got. So when we doodle, it'll be fun to see. Mira, please go get a rag and wipe this area of yours here. So important thing when you're doing multiples of these, if you don't want those colors mixing up, sometimes you do, but if you don't want them mixing up, do keep cleaning your mat. Okay, the last one that I'm going to do is distress inks. So I'm going to grab my distress inks and I'm going to go with some brighter colors this time. So I'm going to be using Candied Apple, and I think I will use a bright yellow. Mira, could you please put this on your table? Thank you. We'll use a mustard seed, a candied apple. I'm going for the brighter colors, a mermaid lagoon. And does anybody have any recommendations for a fourth color? I'm looking at the comments. If you have a recommendation, type it in now. Whoever types in whatever color first, I'll pick that. We could go with a green, a purple, a pink. Anybody have any input for colors? I'm going to be asking Mira if she has an input for colors while I'm looking at my computer screen to see if...
Green.
Green. Okay, I guess I'm doing green since nobody commented. So we're going to have green as our orange. Okay, Claudia, you trump Mira today. Mira, could you get me an orange, please, from there? So we're going to do spiced marmalade. So those are the four colors we're doing. And this is fun. This is really fun. So we'll start with the orange. Smush, smush, smush the orange down. We'll do the blue. This is really intense. Do the yellow. I could have done the yellow there too, it would have made it pretty green. Yeah. But I think I want to do yellow, orange, blue, transitioning into a purplish red. So that's kind of where my head went. So again, with just these four colors, you could have different combinations of how you place the color, and how you place the color will dictate the gradients that you get in the colors, the new colors, the secondary colors that you make. So we're just going to spray again. Oh, that part is so pretty. Look at that.
Oh,
beautiful. And I'm going to go around in a circle like this. So I'm going to place this to get the maximum coverage in the middle. And then I'm just going to move my cardstock around like so. Also, if you get the backs of your cardstock or watercolor paper dirty, which you inadvertently will, don't worry about it. There's no point worrying about it. Look at that. That's a rainbow. We got a rainbow. Isn't that so cool? I was not expecting that. And that's something that I love about this smooshing technique. Most of it, yes, you kind of predict it, but you really can't predict the intensity of the color. You can't predict how it's going to blend, where it's going to blend, especially when you're turning it around and smooshing it. This makes me happy. So we have 3 different ways of doing this. We did a watercolor pan, we did the watercolor brushes, and then we did distress inks.
So pretty.
And then Mira made another one. What did you use?
I
I'm
used
gonna show you
watercolors
first.
again.
She used watercolors again, and this time she got a really intense effect. I'm not really...
Yellow and blue.
She did yellow and blue, and this is what she got. So she got a green.
I was trying to go for green grass.
Okay, can you please use the rag? Okay, so now that we have these done, we'll move on to the technique that yields this. So as you can see, this by itself is beautiful, yes, but what do you do with it? Like, what do you make out of this? So this is a great technique. So grab your Sharpie or an alcohol-based marker. I have a Sharpie handy. We're gonna start with this one, since this is the first one we made. And I also want to point out, it's 2:16, so it took us 15 minutes to make 3 backgrounds. And what Kathy does is she uses the side of a notebook. I don't. I just use a ruler or any basically straight surface that you have. And the idea is that you start at one corner. And this is Kathy's technique again. Kathy Rikusin taught us this. You start at one corner and you keep making lines like so at each corner. Keep turning your paper and you have those 4 corners kind of earmarked, so to speak. And then you start somewhere in the middle of those 2 lines, somewhere in the middle of those 2 lines, and you just keep going. It's really as simple as that. It doesn't have to be exactly the middle. It can also be offset. It really doesn't matter. It's kind of like making a ranunculus with lines.
Oh yeah.
That's what it reminds me of. Here I'm kind of trying to see if I can join these 2 edges, but you don't have to make it particularly anyway. And then again, just kind of keep going, keep turning, keep going. You can make your shapes big, you can make your shapes small. It's totally up to you. Don't overthink it. That is the main takeaway from this exercise. Do not overthink it. If you find yourself overthinking, stop and just make a random line, and that will spoil your pattern, and then you can continue being random. So I have to do that all the time to myself because I obsess over symmetry, and as soon as I pick up the ruler, I feel like I should do things a certain way, but...
Because rulers are to make it like...
Rulers, well, it's about
Right.
precision, and it brings math and it's measurements and all of that, and my brain automatically goes towards making it just right and just perfect, and that's not what the intent of this is. It does not have to be just anything except just Zen. You are supposed to be enjoying this activity and letting your mind loose. So Claudia just said that she loves green also, but she didn't want to mix red and green because it makes brown. So she chose orange instead. And we did end up getting green still. So that's perfect. So just keep going till you reach kind of the middle point. Don't worry about stuff like that. If something peeks out, we're going to make these lines thicker. So don't worry if you get out of the line somewhere. There's always a fix, so to speak. And if you see Kathy also has a video of herself doing this. If you see Kathy doing it, she'll probably do it differently. She won't do it like this. This is my interpretation of how she does it. It's paying homage to her in my own way. So, kind of closing in now. I have a little bit of a triangle there. I'm just gonna keep going. And I will show you this, and then I will show you the final version so you can spot this really cool trick that makes it look, because even now it's like, okay, so you got some lines. This is what makes it cool. So you see how these lines are much thicker and they are rounded off. There are no sharp edges, absolutely no sharp edges. And that's kind of the trick to making this transform into something else. So what she does is she just makes, I call them smiles, just make some smiles at the edges, round them off. It's like making, I'll do it on a bigger piece so you can see clearly. We're starting from here, we're making a smile and joining it to the other end. Making a smile, joining it to the other end. Making a smile, joining it there. We've got 3 smiles, and then you just fill this in. And you keep at it at all the corners. And as you're doing that, when you join the 2 smiles, you start thickening those lines. You see? So that's kind of how this pattern evolves into what it is. So that's, just keep doing that. Just keep making those smiles. And you'll see that it just kind of creeps up on you. The pattern just kind of emerges. It's such a happy way of passing your time. You're having a stressful day or just feeling overwhelmed. If you have some of these backgrounds lying around, especially those of us who do a lot of gel plate prints, we have a lot of backgrounds and we save them because who knows when we might be able to use them. I do the same thing with my alcoholic paintings. I have so many of them in various boxes. But this is the perfect thing because you can just sit and be with other family members or be by yourself and just kind of find your happy place and doodle. And it doesn't need any kind of special tricks or any kind of special tools. It's whatever you have in your house. Usually everybody has Sharpies. If you have fancy alcohol, other alcohol-based markers, use those. I really like the Zig. The ink in mine ran out, so I've ordered one. It should arrive next week, but the Zig markers are really good for this also, this technique. But you know, if you have a Sharpie, just use that. So we could spend I could spend my entire time doing this for you, but I also wanted to show you another technique that I used in those mermaid scales. And I think the rainbow that we got is perfect candidate for that. So I'm just going to switch gears. If you're doing this one that I was working on earlier with the ruler and making those smiles and filling it in, go ahead and keep doing that. You can look up from time to time and just kind of follow along the mermaid that I'm about to make, the scales or the hills if you turn it upside down, or just an abstract pattern. But you can continue doing what you are doing. You don't have to stop and switch gears. So all I start with is just making these waves, I guess, curves. And once I have my first row, that dictates the rest. So we're just going to go in between the first shapes that we made. We're just going to go like that. I made that too small, so I'm going to have to double up over there. But what you want is a continuous line of hues or waves again. And you know, that doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it's all going to get thickened up. And it'll be one big pattern, so who cares? Don't stress. Do not stress. So just keep doing that over and over. It's all about repetitive pattern making. It's all repetitive, and that's what makes it calming. It takes your mind off of stuff. And I haven't forgotten, I know it's almost 2:30, and this is supposed to be a 30-minute break in your afternoon. I have not forgotten that we need to do the lucky draw for the card that I made. I think it was on Wednesday that I'm giving to one lucky person. There were 3 commenters. Samira's going to do a lucky draw in a bit. I just want to get this done so I can show you how it just changes. You've got this background that looks nice, but what takes it from being nice to being amazing is thick black lines. I used to be so afraid of adding black to anything. And the first person I see do black on her beautiful paintings, and I gasped, was Birgit Koopsen. She is an artist who is in Amsterdam, and she does amazing work with the gel plate. And she does a lot of negative space, both with black and white actually, and she uses Posca markers to make these amazing doodles on top of her jelly plate prints. It's just amazing to watch her transform just what would be plain backgrounds into something phenomenal. So when you turn this around, that almost looks like a candy wrapper. So what I do next is in this, I just make those, you can make the U's thicker, but what I also do is fill this up, kind of like an inverse right there, make like an almond shape or an eye shape, the eyes with which you see eyes, and just fill this in. And you know, there's a million ways to do this. You could add dots, you could add stripes. You don't have to fill it in all black if you don't want to. You could make it however you want to make it. So don't feel like this is the only way this can go. You could also just use this background and make a big bold flower on it with some leaves. You know, I just want to make backgrounds, so that's what I'm doing. And if your paper gets too wet, that was another tip that I wanted to share. Just use a heat gun if you have one. If you don't, leave it be, put it out in the sun. It'll dry up. You don't have to use a marker right away. Save your backgrounds for another day when you're feeling like
It dried out.
like it dried up, when you're feeling kind of like, okay, this day is just not working for me. Just sit with a black Sharpie or alcohol-based pen and doodle away. So you'll see how this, I continue doing it, will transform into this. And this is actually going to have much more vibrant colors. So it's really simple. And then all I did was add a sentiment strip from Simon Says Stamp. And I added some sequins, and it's done, you know. And it brings joy to someone who gets it. You've made a card, and you've made it while you were having fun and adding some zen to your day. In this one, this was a tricky one. So I started out doing a rectangle. I say tricky because I didn't know what I was doing. And then I thought I'd do like a cross, but then I didn't. And I kind of, in the center where I stuck this sentiment, is a big black blob. So that's why the sentiment is over here. That's my secret that I'm sharing. But
It's not a secret.
nobody knows that there's a big black blob there because I put the sentiment there. So what I did over here was basically I made lines with a ruler, diagonal and whichever way. And then I started making these circles, half circles, semicircles. And I was trying to not make them join. So I had them a bit staggered. And it started becoming too symmetrical and like a flower. And I didn't know what to do with symmetry because, again, I was doing something that I set out not to do. So, you know, stuff like that happens. But at the end of the day, it still turned out to be pretty. It has a nice sentiment on it that says, be you, be true, love what you do. And that's really what matters at the end of the day, that you're sending out rays of positivity and happiness out into the world when you're mailing cards that you're making yourself. Okay, so we are going to now do the drawing.
Okay,
This is the card that I made on Wednesday. I was feeling really, 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 really depressed. I had had a bad morning. It just dawned on me, it had been 70 days or 71 days since we'd been home, and I was just super sad at not being able to see my friends, meet them, hug them, go out with them, just, you know, be out and about in the world. So I usually keep a stack of these, this is blue cardstock. I just have a stack of these in my drawer. So I grabbed one of them, grabbed a stencil, got my distress inks. I shared a tour of my workspace on Facebook the other day. And it's not a lot of space, but I have everything accessible so I can keep using it. And I just used my distress inks and started going over it. I was going to do all blue on blue, and then I added a touch of yellow, and suddenly it perked up. So this is what this card became, and then I found the perfect sentiment for it. Smile, it's a good day to be happy. It also reminded me that I have a lot to be grateful for. There are many, many reasons to smile, and because of how this image started and where it ended up, just emotionally for me, I wanted to share that with whoever wanted it. So I had sent out a message saying, if anybody wants this, go to my blog post, write me a comment, and if there's more than one person who wants it, we will do a random drawing. So that's what we're doing right now. I'm just reading my messages. Deborah says, love your doodling, so stress-free. I find the Zentangling to have too many rules and far too precise to be relaxing. That is the exact reason why I don't do Zentangling. I might call it Zentangling from time to time, but my interpretation of Zentangling is so different than the rules of Zentangling. So I try not to call it Zentangling now. I just say mindless scribbles because that's really what I'm doing. So yes, it's not supposed to have rules. It's not supposed to stress you out. So, okay, so we had 3 people who wanted this card, Claudia, Dot, and Deepa. So what we did was we're not going to go high tech here. Mira, how many strips did you make?
I made 6 strips.
How could you have made 6 strips? You made 6 strips, so two strips had the same name?
Yeah.
Okay, so she made 6, she was in charge of this. So she made 6 strips. Hi, Noor, thank you. She's saying it looks great. So we're just gonna mix them up. So there are 6 strips. One person has 2 names on this. Mira, where are you? Okay. You wanna shake it up and pull out a name? Shake it up. Well, you have to do this on camera so that people can see we're not cheating. And you don't know whose name is where, right? Okay, pick one and open it on camera. You cannot open it on the side. You gotta open it on camera. Deepa is the lucky winner. So she gets this card. So Deepa, if you can please email me, I will email me your mailing address. I will ship this off to you and let me know if you want this blank and you want to send it off to someone else, or if you want me to write something in it for you. So that was our first lucky drawing of this season.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mira. So I hope that you enjoyed watching today's Art with Mansi, and I hope some of you did art along with me and got a good break from your week. So these were the original samples. I do want to point out I had used some shimmer glaze on this and a glaze pen, so if you want, you can enhance them. In other ways, this one is a work in progress. It will get turned into one of these cards. And I hope you got some ideas on what you could do that would be fun for you, stress-free, give you a break, produce something along the way that will help someone else feel bright and cheerful about their day. So thank you for tuning in. I really, really, really appreciate your taking time on Fridays to join me on these little art sessions, and I hope you find value in them. Please leave me comments and email me or send me messages on Instagram or YouTube or Facebook letting me know what you might want to do next. I'm happy to share this with you. So I'll see you all next time. Next Friday, 2 o'clock, Mira has a session tomorrow, Saturday, May 16 at 11 a.m., where she'll be doing self-portraits. If you want to tune in, I will put information on that on my Facebook and my Instagram. Thank you again. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.